No, that's the old form. If you don't need it, you could just email me, whatever. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Environment and Agriculture. We're going to get underway with our exec session this morning. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Representative Freeman, would you please lead us? Okay, so a couple things before we start. We have an exec session this morning from 10 a.m. at 10:30. We are supposed to have a presentation from the New Hampshire Food Alliance regarding their strategic plan, which should be of interest to everyone. The other thing I wanted to mention was I received a message from a Senate message. The Senate concurs with the House of Representatives in the passage of the following entitled bill, with amendment in the passage of which amendment the Senate asks the concurrence of the House of Representatives, HB 179, relative to hazardous waste accident fees. So if you all recall that bill, there is an amendment that was placed in there regarding, and this is very short, so I'll read it and then we can decide whether we all concur or not, and then I can get this over to Paul Smith. Amend the bill by replacing section 1 with the following: non-payment fees for hazardous materials accidents, RSA 154:8 -A, Roman numeral 2 -A, in parenthesis H, is repealed and reenacted to read as follows. A penalty of no greater than $1,000 per day shall be paid to the claimant for each day of non-payment beyond 90 days. The cumulative penalty imposed shall not exceed 25% of the cost established under paragraph A. As long as the responsible party adheres to a payment plan that has been established between the claimant and the responsible party, no additional daily penalty shall be imposed. That to me sounds reasonable. I know this was the bill having to do with the hazardous waste fees that were incurred because equipment was damaged because of the hazardous waste, and they wanted a way in which to be able to collect the fees to replace the equipment. So Representative Potenza, you have a question.
What is the, I know that we worked on that because how it was initially was, just not
Right.
Something that could be sustainable. Where did they make the change? Was it in the 25%? And what was it before? Can we just,
I can just do
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
because I don't have it in
So,
front of me.
So the way it was when it left our committee was that it would be no more than 100% of the initial of the cost of the damages. So they basically reduced the maximum possible penalty by
3/4.
by 3/4. But what we're talking about here is the typical amount of damage that is getting repaid in these is over $100,000. So, so 25% of that is still a
Substantial amount.
It's a pretty big stick.
Okay.
And so, may I?
You may, sure.
So, one question that they asked when we appeared before them that I was expecting them to address in this, and I'm not going to. I don't think it's a big enough issue to focus on, but the current statute is unclear about who gets paid that penalty money. The assumption is that it also goes to the body that's been injured, but it's not.
Oh.
It's not specific in statute. It might be clear in rule. I don't know, but I don't think it's worth doing a committee of conference to tweak that, because if they cared about it enough to do something about it, they would have.
And I would imagine too, if we give this some time to work or not work, that this would be back for another change at some point in the future. So, but I think this is fine. Representative Germana?
Thank you. One of the things I remember us talking about was our concern about whether or not this could fall unduly on homeowners. You know, most of this ideally would be paid by insurance, but if it's not. And so is that addressed in part by the up to $1,000 a day so that there is room to determine kind of a lower amount? I'm just trying to figure out how the bill as it stands now addresses our concerns about the impact on homeowners.
Well,
Yeah,
Representative Comtois?
Based on what Chair Aaron said, it says no greater than $1,000. So I think that's where we have the leeway. They can't charge more than 1,000, but they can charge less.
And there's also a provision here, as long as the responsible party adheres to a payment plan.
that's right.
That has been established between the claimant and the responsible party, no additional daily penalty shall be imposed. So I think that there is a protection for a homeowner in that instance. So if we're all okay with that, then I'll go ahead and let Clerk Smith know that we concur.
And just one more point.
Representative Bixby?
Representative King asked me if the prime sponsor was okay with this. He did not come to the Senate hearing because he was out of town and didn't know about the Senate hearing until he'd already scheduled that trip. So he got back on the following day and discovered that it had been heard. He thanked me very much for introducing it and was fully supportive of the bill.
Okay. All right, good. All right, good. Okay, so that's one thing out of the way. All right, we have 3 bills on our docket this morning that we are planning to exec. I have SB 302, requiring background checks for solid waste facility owners, SB 229, relative to the sale of uninspected bison, red deer, and elk meat, and SB 50, establishing a committee to study the regulation of private animal boarding facilities. We will not be execing SB 302 this morning. I had a request late Thursday from Director Wimsatt to add an additional change to the bill. And because of the holiday and everything in, I didn't get it in Friday, but I sent it to OLS yesterday. I think they may have finished it, but I really do need some time to go over it, especially with Senator Pearl and Director Wimsatt, to make sure that the draft end result of this amendment is exactly what they want. So we're not really ready to exec this bill this morning. So when it comes time, I will recess that. But we can certainly go on with SB 229 and SB 50. So I am going to open up the exec session for SB 302. I am going to recess that bill to be exec for another time. Sure. Representative Germana?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I appreciate your desire to make sure that it is exactly what we want it to be. This is the third bite of the apple on this
Exactly.
particular bill. So
Yes.
it is really important that we get it right this time. So I appreciate your decision to recess
Thank you.
the session.
And so it looks to me as if, I know I don't want to, drag you all in here to take 5 minutes to exec a bill. We could possibly do that on a session day. Or another idea, I'm planning a field trip around May 20th to go visit UNH. The dairy barns there and some other things. I've been in contact with Antoine Beckerman. And so we may, come in and we can exec the bill then and then go on to the field trip. So there's a number of different options that we have in getting that bill exec. So and I'm going to recess SB 302 for a future date. And I will move on to execing SB 229. Do I hear a motion for SB 229 relative to the sale of uninspected bison, red deer, and elk meat? Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion for ought to pass on SB 229, please.
Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
Representative Bixby, thank you for your second. And Representative Comtois, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. So this is really a common sense bill, and it's actually allowing non-amenable species to enter the retail chain so that people can have access to what I would call give them more options of buying meat, basically from New Hampshire farms. So, and it also goes towards our goal of food security to giving more meat options too. So,
Are there any questions? Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so I, I worked on this, both of the previous, bison and red deer and elk meat bills that, we've had. And, so this basically does a couple of things. One is it opens it up to, selling at retail rather than just off the farm or farm stand, and to restaurants. And it also, removes the sunset so that it changes, so that the much more challenging set of inspection routines won't go back into place. That more challenging set required a veterinarian to be at the point of slaughter and do a antemortem and a postmortem inspection right there. Getting a veterinarian with our current lack of veterinarians in the state, to do that was basically creating an unsurmountable impediment. So we scaled that back, and the department has put into rules certain more inspection steps, such as having tissue samples of every fifth animal that's slaughtered to test for various problems. So and the department did not. I alerted the department to this bill and asked the state vet to come and testify if he had any issues with it. He didn't come and testify. So I think that the department feels that this is under control. I'm happy to trust them on this. With the elk and red deer, those are closed herds. You cannot import any new animal to those herds from either in the state or out of state. So the chance of getting chronic wasting disease coming into those herds is very low. Doing the on-farm slaughter for these animals, which are essentially wild animals, is much more humane and is better for the meat product. So I think this bill makes sense.
Thank you. And I hope those of you who missed the hearing, I hope you had an opportunity to review the hearing online. Thank you for taking the time to do that. Any other questions or comments on this bill? Seeing none, I'd like sorry, Representative Sofakaitis.
Thank you. The thing that turned it around for me, because I was a little hazy on this, was the fact that he does a humane kill shot behind them, and they're not loaded up and taken somewhere for this to happen. So there's not the stress response and leaching all that stress into the meat. And I think that that's what changed it for me.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I'd like the clerk to call the roll on the motion for auto pass on SB 229.
Vice Chairwoman Comtois,
Yes.
Representative Kenny,
Yes.
Representative Potenza,
Yes.
Representative Freeman,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Scully,
Yes.
Representative Barber,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Ranking Member Bixby,
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis,
Yes.
Representative Germana,
Yes.
Representative Haskins, Representative Gruber,
Yes.
Chairwoman Aaron.
Yes.
16-0. Motion passes.
Okay, may we put this on consent?
Certainly.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'm going to close the exec session on SB 229. We'll open up the exec session for SB 50, establishing a committee to study the regulation of private animal boarding facilities. Do I hear a motion? Representative Haskins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we adopt Senate Bill 50 with a not to pass motion.
Do I hear, I'll second that. I'll second that. Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative Haskins?
Certainly. So although I wasn't here for the hearing, I did get to review it online, and I think we all agree it was very disturbing and that something needs to be done. The lack of oversight for these kennels begs the question of we can do better. So I'd like to see a study committee investigate what the current statutes have to say and what needs to be done to add additional protections so that people don't wind up in the position that the witnesses elicited.
Thank you for that. And I want to add too, and I want to thank our committee researcher, Christy Ausfresser, for doing some work in the background on looking at if kennels are regulated in some manner in the state of New Hampshire. And we found, or she found, she can't even get a list of what kennels there are in the state, which I think is pretty problematic because all businesses are registered with the Secretary of State's office, and there's certain codes that are associated with those listings, but we couldn't really get a list of who all the kennels are. So we don't even know. I know that there are quite a few of them. We just don't have a precise number or where they are, who owns them, and so forth. And I think, with some sort of oversight or licensure or requirements for operation, for insurance or liability insurance or whatever, it would be nice to be able to have a list of those persons who are operating doggy daycares or any place which is caring for cats and dogs, I would imagine. Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so over the years, it sort of vaguely occurred to me, what is the deal with there not being licensing on these? And I had been sort of wondering if there were any problems because I hadn't heard of problems with them. And then, while we had this hearing, we definitely heard about problems. So that sort of moved it from, maybe we ought to do something about this to, yeah, we definitely have to do something about this. We also got a letter from a constituent, or I think it was an email a couple weeks ago, who is, I believe she's a member of Dogs, or is at least sort of in that same general way of thinking, and Diane Richardson.
Yeah.
And she said that we definitely needed to have more rules on this. It needs to be studied because we need to make sure that the rules are appropriately tailored. There are rules for larger kennels of a specific type that are very restrictive in terms of you need to have like a cement floor and you need to have some sort of specific, caging material and whatnot, which is really not necessarily appropriate for this purpose. So we need to make sure that when we do that study, we need to make sure that any sort of licensing requirements and regulations we put in place are really tailored specifically to the purpose.
Agreed. Representative Potenza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I watched it because I wasn't here, but I have a little bit of knowledge on this just because of, friends with that have used the doggy daycares. In Exeter, there's one, and in Dover, and that had some issues and stuff. So I just I know that the legislature doesn't work fast. Sometimes there's a snail's pace. So in the meantime, especially with all the testimony that took place, there should be something that happens in the meantime, like whether it be inspections or something like that. Do you believe that the commissioner could get involved while this is getting studied to make sure that if there are certain places that are, operating that have a lot of issues, that these are looked into, so it's not just a year goes by and there's nothing?
Yeah, the problem with that is that if he doesn't have statutory authority to do that, then he can't do that. So, he needs to have that authority to be able to do an inspection of a kennel. I mean, right now, he's got the authority to inspect shelters,
That's what I was going to say. If we already have that for shelters,
but it's
with
not
sanitary
but those are
conditions,
Not, yeah,
it
those are
wouldn't-
not considered shelters, so you really can't. Yeah, but it is quite disturbing with the testimony to see that dogs are disappearing, that dogs are dying, that dogs are getting injured. So clearly, there's a problem out
and
there.
animals getting sick.
Yeah,
That's where
yeah,
I know
yeah.
the
Representative Sofakidis.
So for 10 years, I was a camp nurse up at the Greek camp in Contoocook. And the only reason I'm saying this is because when I was training the staff up there, they were very lackadaisical until I got there. And when I got there, I was like, because like all the medicines were just left out and there was no record of who got what medicine or anything. And I was like, oh my God, I was a wreck. And so I told the staff up there over and over again, there's no margin of error with OPKs, which is other people's kids. And I think it's the same with other people's pets. There's no margin of error. So you've got to be able to, especially if you put yourself at a boarding kennel, you know that there's going to be a problem when there's a pass off and the dog's owners don't come quickly back to get them. That that's a weak link. And so I was devastated to hear these stories. And because I look at my two pups, 150 pounds each, and how I would feel if they took off, especially my girl, because she's like a Navy SEAL. She's all about escape and evade, and so I just
Well,
so I
and
just-
I have to say too, as a pet owner myself who has boarded my pet, you try as much as you can to do your due diligence and ask people, have you ever tried this person, or have you ever left your dog there? What did you think? Blah, blah, blah. But you don't always know. And if, certainly there's a lot of red flags. I mean, if they don't allow you to come in and see the place, if they don't, if they have certain weird rules or whatever, that there are certain red flags that people maybe should recognize, and maybe they don't. But at the end of the day, I think that a study committee here, and just looking at this and discussing it, certainly makes a lot of sense. And whether we come out with some sort of legislation or statutory remedy, then, that's to be seen. Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So licensing may not cure this problem, but at least we're a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Representative Howard.
Wouldn't regulations come hand in hand with licensing? In order to qualify for a license, wouldn't there have to be a set of standards?
Could be, and that's something that we'll talk about in a study committee. Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that all avenues will, the reason for this committee is so that all avenues can be looked at. But I think that the big thing is the owners want some sort of recourse that they can. And licensing isn't necessarily going to give them recourse, but if we have like a violations or similar to what we just did with this other law, that if you're not doing something or if a pet is injured on your watch, there may be penalties. And I think that that's one of the avenues that we should be looking at.
Absolutely. Any other further discussion on this bill?
I did have one other thing
Oh,
to say.
Representative- Yep, Scully?
It actually, the other side to this too is the committee can also look at what types of protections could be put in place for the people who are boarding the animals.
Sure.
I only say that because we ended up watching somebody's dog, and it turns out the dog had a heart condition, and we weren't informed of that. And like they went on vacation, and after about 4 days, I let the dog out to go to the bathroom in our fenced yard. Dog didn't come back in. We went out to find the dog, and the dog was dead. And so that was a pretty, it was a bad situation. And then we had to go through the whole thing. Do we call them on vacation and tell them? We decided not to. They couldn't do anything about it. We told them when they came home. But what we didn't know was that the dog was sick. And it wasn't anything we could do about it. It just happened. But it would also be good, I think, for people boarding animals. There might be something put in place where the owners actually sign something regarding the medical condition of the dog or cat or something else so that they don't have this type of situation happen to them and have the owners turn around and blame them for something when
Well,
they
certainly
have no
that's,
control over
that's
it.
another point the committee can consider, absolutely. And there should be protections for everybody involved in in
So for that
situation.
reason, I think, yeah, this is a very good idea to look at all sides of this.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'd like the clerk to call the roll on the motion for auto pass on SB 50.
Vice Chairwoman Comtois,
Yes.
Representative Kenny,
Yes.
Representative Potenza,
Yes.
Representative Freeman.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Scully,
Yes.
Representative Barber,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Ranking Member Bixby,
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis,
Yes.
Representative Germana,
Yes.
Representative Haskins,
Aye.
Representative Howard,
Yes.
Representative Wheeler,
Yay.
Representative Gruber,
Yes.
Chairwoman Aaron.
Yes.
16-0. Motion passes.
Okay, wonderful. May we put that on consent?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to end the, thank you. I'm going to end the, conclude the exec on SB 50. And please, Representative Comtois and Representative Haskins, I need committee reports done. And now, as we are done with our exec sessions, thank you. We have with us this morning some folks from New Hampshire Food Alliance, correct? Yeah. Please come up to the microphone, introduce yourselves to the committee. We are 16. And you have the screen. I hope it's turned on. Yeah. Sure. Go. Okay. Sure. So please introduce yourselves to us.
Now it's on. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Chairwoman Aaron and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Cardwell. I'm the director of the New Hampshire Food Alliance, which is a statewide network coordinated by the University of New Hampshire. We're a network of over 200 businesses and organizations that all work to strengthen our local food system here in New Hampshire. And I am thrilled to be here to share with you the first ever New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan. So I might pause just a moment and set up my computer, if that's all
Sure,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think Christy can assist you. Oh, thank you. Oh, my. Wow. This is quite a document.
That it is.
Wow, Representative Bixby, you even have your name in this.
Do.
You do. Wow.
Yes.
How
So-
impressive.
Well, I gave occasional bits of advice but on there were a lot of people
We
who
work on that all
contributed to
month.
this.
Yeah.
It was a huge collective effort, which was very aptly guided by Nicole Cardwell. So I'm happy to hear her present it to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bixby. I'm going to dive in and we're going to hope we have some slides to back me up here, but if not, I'm very capable without slides. Thank you all for having me again. So I'm here because in 2023, our state set out to build its first ever New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan. And the goal was not to create a document that would collect dust on a shelf, pretty as it is. The goal was to create an actionable, tangible, very specific roadmap towards positive change, to streamline all of our collective efforts to define funding, pass policies, develop programs, invest in infrastructure, and build networks in support of a thriving New Hampshire food system. And so with full support from the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food, UNH Cooperative Extension, and leadership across our network, we spent the last 2 years bringing together those that work on these issues across the state and building the document that you see in front of you today. And I'm joined by a few members that served on the advisory committee for the development of the strategic plan today. As Representative Aaron pointed out, Representative Bixby served on the advisory committee. We have Commissioner Sean Jasper here today, who served on the advisory committee and helped to advise and lead the process. And Alan Reitz is here with us today, the Director of Public and Government Affairs for the Hanover Co-op Food Stores. In the case that committee members are interested in hearing a business perspective on the impact of the strategic plan for our state, he is open to sharing some comments at the end of my presentation or helping me to answer questions. So, we have slides. So here's what the New Hampshire Food Alliance is. This strategic plan has been over a year in the making. We brought together hundreds of individuals, hundreds of organizations, producers, from the people from the private sector and the public sector to bring together our best thinking around a series of complex issues and decide on what are the key topics that are crucial to a thriving New Hampshire food system. And we narrowed it down to 27. And then pulled together teams of experts that could speak to each one. And we asked them to be really concise, challengingly concise and clear, and look to the best, most current data we have in front of us and say, what is the current condition around this issue? Why does it matter? What's challenging about this? And where should we go from here? What are some really clear, up to five recommendations for change? And the way I view this, one of my favorite ways to look at this is an opportunity for transformation. Can we look at where our food system is right now, the challenges that our farmers and food producers and food businesses are facing, and then accept that as our reality, but look at it as an opportunity for transformation. The advisory committee for the strategic plan brought together many government agencies and organizations across the state, including the New Hampshire Agricultural Experiment Station, New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, Vital Communities, New Hampshire Food Bank, and many others. And after bringing those folks together in various teams for the last 18 months, the plan was published a month ago on March 18th. We had 26 advisory committee members, 118 subject matter experts representing 89 organizations that co-authored this plan. And what you have in front of you is 27 product, market, and issue briefs that have 143 specific recommendations across them. The process for developing the briefs was that we brought together teams of experts that our broad community could agree were well-versed to speak to those issues. And then we gave them the freedom to say, where are we at and where should we go from here? And then had multiple points of opportunity for public engagement. We had public comment periods for every brief. We had listening sessions along the way, and we heard from many hundreds of individuals across the state at any given point. What I want to emphasize is that this is a plan for New Hampshire by New Hampshire. It was made by individuals and organizations and community members across the state. And it is something that is very well poised and really specifically developed to strengthen our food system. So you have a big document in front of you, and what I'm hoping to do with our short time today is focus on how this can help you as a legislative body. And the way we've tried to view this large body of information is how can we organize it in a way that helps all of the different individuals that might want to access this information get to the information that's helpful to them when they are in a position to make change. So whether you're a state legislator, a funder, a researcher, how can we help you access the parts of this plan, assuming you're not all going to memorize all 135 pages of it? How can we help you access the right information that you need in that moment? And that's what I'm hoping to spend our time doing. So the same information can be viewed in two different ways. As you see, you have the first ever hard copies of this Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan in front of you. The same content is on our website in an interactive version that you can use more dynamically. The 27 briefs I've mentioned before, and I'm going to walk you through what a brief includes. You have the table of contents in front of you, but you can think of them as being divided into three topics. Products are some key products that we grow, raise, produce here in New Hampshire. Markets are markets through which we could sell local food, like grocery stores and retail food cooperatives, where New Hampshire residents spend approximately half of their food dollars. And then issues that are crucial to a thriving New Hampshire food system, like supporting future and beginning farmers, or value-added processing and co-manufacturing. So my hope, before I dive into the thrilling anatomy of a brief, is two things. One is that this can be a resource to you all. I know that you often need to act quickly on issues and get yourself well-versed and educated about something that you need to move on quickly. I hope that this can be a really great resource to you, so that when you say, oh, there's a bill about food waste or landfills or career technical assistance, that if you're interested in agriculture, which I'm sure you all are in the committee you serve on, that you can quickly find some concise information about that and the most recent data available on it in very nicely laid out graphs. And the second is that this can serve as a menu of possible policy changes. Many of the 143 recommendations are policy changes at the state level that are being asked for. So as you look towards future legislative sessions, the hope is that you could use this as a tool, as a menu of options for what's being asked for from experts in their fields for change. And I'll walk you through how to find that. So if you could turn to page 120, we can all look at the wasted food brief as I quickly walk you through the sections. So the briefs are brief, which was hard to get all of these experts to come together and remain brief. The top section is what's at stake. It has a couple of sentences that say, why should I care about this? So hopefully it can be an advocacy tool for us all to use. Why is wasted food an important issue? Why are grocery stores and food cooperatives a critical market for local and regional food? Current conditions lay out what's currently happening with that issue, product, or market. Challenges and opportunities. So the challenges are challenges. Challenges in terms of that market, product, or issue. Opportunities, we encouraged authors not to just do the flip side of the challenges like many do in that situation, but rather to look at it as assets we can leverage in our state. What is happening that we can build on, for example? There's some great charts and graphs in there that we hope will be helpful to you all and to people across New Hampshire as they try to grapple with these challenging issues. And then at the end there, you'll see recommendations. So those are the most briefs have 5 recommendations. We pushed authors to be very specific in terms of what they're looking for. And then lastly, the authors. You can see where did this information come from, who wrote it. And the authors are not the only individuals that contributed to this content, but they are the ones primarily responsible for it. I'm going to pause and just show you briefly the recommendations and how you can access them. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So this goes back to my same information two-way slide. So the same content that is in that document in front of you is on our website in an interactive way. Uh-oh. I might need you back for support. Where'd they go? All right. Well, you know what? We might have to skip that part. Let's see if this... It was there, but it was the... Huh. It doesn't want to let me screen share. Okay. Well, that's all right. We can go to the slide. It won't be as exciting, but... Yeah, it's just a screen share. Okay. So you're looking at a screenshot of what I wanted to show you. But this is a screenshot of our website where the strategic plan information is housed. Each brief has its own page. So the same content, but laid out in a way that's more accessible to anyone, however they use readers. And you can download the PDF. So if you were having a meeting about a certain issue, you can always download just the 2-page PDF of any brief straight from the website. If you go to the page about recommendations, then you can filter by what type of action it is. So say I like to pretend that I'm Representative Bixby. So I am Representative Bixby and I'm looking at this page and I'm thinking about the next legislative session. I might filter for policy changes. And so you can filter for policy changes. And if you did that, you would see there's about 30 or so recommendations that are policy changes. That's a lot to take in, a lot to read. And so then I might say, what are my interests? And you can look at the other ways to filter. You can filter by goals. You can filter by brief topic. So maybe you look at the goal and you see that natural resource is one of the goals, natural resource conservation, and you further filter by that. Now you have three policy recommendations that are both policy changes and speak to natural resource conservation. One of them might catch your eye, and there's one that's focused on launching I can't do it by heart here, but launching a solid waste working group. And
So is that the Establish a Food Recovery and Diversion Working Group?
That is, thank you, Representative Bixby, for that. And if you were interested in that, you could open it up and then see the recommendation, see what they wrote, what the authors wrote. You could look for context, and there's a button that links you back to the brief it came from. So if you were interested in exploring that, you might see what challenges and assets led to that recommendation. What data do we have backing up that recommendation? What subject matter experts asked for that? And then if you wanted to craft legislation around it, you could follow up directly with those authors. You could say, I'm interested in this. What sort of support are you able to give? Do you have preferences on what it looks like? Whatever you would need to move forward with that. And so that's the hope, is that you could, whatever position you're in, you can find either context, you could find actionable recommendations, and then you could find support to move those forward. And this is only the beginning. It feels in some ways like an end, but it is not. It was a long road to get to publishing this first ever New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan, but we look at it as it was a collective resource. It is a collective resource, and we created it as a food systems community, and we'll move it forward together as a food systems community. And so to reiterate, I hope that for state legislators, this can be a resource for concise information about any given topic related to the food system that you need information on quickly. And also, a synthesis of our community's best thinking around policy changes needed, a menu of potential policy changes that might strengthen our food system in some way.
How long before you may look to review any changes? Because now we know, oh boy, there's stuff here that we could make bills out of, right?
Absolutely. Where,
How long before you review where we are and see, make revisions to this?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think that other states that have followed parallel processes have revisited every 10 years. One of the things we thought was important is that this was a bit dynamic. So while there is a print version, because many of us, myself included, enjoy something physical to look at and look through, the online web version, we can update as needed. So we can update, one of the things I hope to do is update recommendations as they're completed or as they're being worked on. And so that it can be a resource to coordinate the hundreds of organizations doing this work across the state and to understand what everyone is working on and where there are gaps that no one is working on. We're still learning. So this is absolutely a snapshot in time, but we hope the website can help keep the information current and useful.
So you mentioned there were 27 different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any areas that you feel deserve a little bit more of a priority than others?
Thank you for that question. We viewed all of these topics through two lenses. One is equity and the other is farm viability. And farm viability is something that is really crucial. And I think that that's not one of the 27 topics because we thought this is so important and crucial across all of them. Many of our farms are very, very small. The majority of them grossing less than $20,000 a year. Many of our farms are struggling. One of the statistics I saw is approximately 70% of our farms, their expenses exceeded their revenue. So farm viability and operating a viable business and supporting our farmers in doing so in a really challenging environment, I think is really crucial. And a lot of the opening pages of the strategic plan before you get to the briefs and is also on the website speaks to that, has some data around that and some recommendations around how to approach that. There were also some themes that came up time and again. And so we laid some of those out. For example, housing. Housing is an issue that is important for many reasons and is challenging for many reasons and has intersectionality with agriculture and food systems and is something that, as we talk about it, is something that can become very contentious between the agricultural community and the housing development community, but doesn't need to be. And so we've been exploring avenues to address both together. There are creative opportunities to address both.
So you, just before we can go on, you mentioned that farms are struggling. Historically, has it gotten better or worse, do you think? Just based on your research and your information that you've gleaned from this?
It depends what you mean by historically. So the data that we saw in 2022, it wasn't new. That wasn't new. The trends hold over the last 10, 15 years. It's not as if those statistics are new and things have gotten significantly worse in the last 10 years. But if you look further back, I'll look to Commissioner Jasper to talk about anything related to history. Oh, you all know him well. I see they laugh. Then if you look further back, farms were not always struggling this much. We had a different social and economic construct. And so it depends how far back you look is my answer.
Representative Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for appearing before us. Very informative piece of information you gave us, and what's very, it's very upsetting is on 120 wasted food of your document. According to the statistics in 2022, 38% of food is wasted or unsold. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And even more astounding is 43% of that wasted food comes from households. Unbelievable. What can we do to change this? What even small steps, what can we start to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the appropriate answer for me is to say, look to the recommendations in that brief. That I have my own opinions, but the authors who are experts in wasted food spoke to that, and for New Hampshire specifically, those statistics are national, and have been holding steady at about that for as long as I've worked in this field, so for about 10 or 20 years, and I think there's so many reasons to do something about that. I know that's not what you asked, and that this is a really multifaceted challenge, food waste, and especially the waste at a household level is a complex one to address, because a lot of it is consumer awareness and education, and related to culinary skills, related to understanding how to reduce food waste in your household. But there's waste at every part of the food supply chain. There's waste on farms that could be additional revenue for our farms. There's food waste that's inevitable or that is going to happen that we could keep from landfills and turn into crucial soil matter. So there's food waste is a really rich conversation to have.
Representative Bixby, and then
Yeah.
Potenza and Gruber. And then-
So on the topic of priorities, one of the things that we discussed in the advisory committee was that we didn't actually want to make a list of priorities, because that makes it sound like some of this is more important than other, and that it would be like creating a to-do list, and the stuff at the bottom doesn't matter if it falls off. All of this is important. The other thing is that it is not a matter of one organization or one person doing all of it. This is just as there were a lot of people who went into putting this document together, we're hoping that there'll be many, many more people who are going to be working on the recommendations in the ways that they are able. And so there are certain things, as a legislator, there are certain things that I can do that would be appropriate for me to do. As someone who helps with a community, with a school garden, there are other things I can do on that front. Perhaps figuring out ways of getting more resources to the school garden. But there are other things that I'm not going to be able to do as much with. I don't know that much about fisheries. That's not where I'm going to be putting my effort in. But there are people in the state who know a lot about fisheries, and they will be contributing to that. And looking and with those people who are involved in the various different areas of the briefs, they can look at the brief and say, oh, I can help with that. So this is really a matter of providing a menu for people who care about food and agriculture and just the general sustainability of the state to contribute where they can. So that's why we avoided the idea of a priority.
Yes.
Because the whole thing is a priority. I mean, we don't produce enough food in state. We don't even know how much food we actually do produce in state, because there are a lot of people like me who produce a lot of their own food by gardening or by raising hens or whatever, and that's not counted because we don't know how to count it yet.
Yep.
Which gets to another point, which is that one of the things I really like about there being both the web version and the print version, I find it easier to read the print version, but in a few years, the print version is not going to be current.
Mm-hmm.
But we might actually be able to find out that answer about how much people are producing on their own, in their own backyards, and incorporate that into the web version, because the web is easily updatable,
Yep.
Unlike a print version. So one of the things I really like about this, and I know that you have you've been so busy getting the
the initial product out that you haven't figured out necessarily the mechanism for for how you're going to update the web version, but it's certainly doable, and I like the fact that we'll be able to do that so that we can have a record of not only where we've been, but also, where things have progressed.
Yes. Thank you.
Representative
Absolutely.
Potenza? Oh, were you going to comment on that?
No, it's okay. I'm just thanking Representative Bixby.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. So I have a little background in the wasted food. I grew up, we had a family restaurant, and so and we always were, it was easier back then. My father started his restaurant in 1969, and my brother took that over and opened up several other ones, and then I also we had a restaurant here in Concord. And so none of our food ever went to waste. We worked hand in hand with the Boys and Girls Club and all of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the Friendly Kitchen. We became very close with them. I used to work there on a regular basis. What I don't understand is where we are in 2025 in regards with food waste. And I talk to people all the time about this. This is like my biggest thing. When I go to a restaurant and I see a buffet, when I go to any of these big events that has gobs and gobs of trays of food, and I ask what they're going to do, and they tell me they have to throw it away. Why are we still at this point? It's all about liability and all of this kind of stuff, and that really has to be cut away. And there are actually a former church. I know actually 3 churches that are doing this right now. They go to Hannaford's one, they go to Whole Foods. They're getting things that are like close to being expired, and they're handing that out to their church community. But there should be so much more than that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me if it should be going to people that aren't, the whole thing I don't get. And I feel as if we're just such missed opportunities all over the place.
Yeah.
And the composting piece, 100%. Like, I don't know what we could do if there was a commercial element and all of that. I was reading through here, but the numbers where I look at New Hampshire, and we've kind of been really behind in this whole space. And there's been a lot of talk about it, but not a lot of action. And even at the co-ops, like I love the one in Hanover. My daughter was in the hospital there for months, and so we went there all the time. And I frequent the Concord one. I lived in Concord for several years. What are they doing with their food waste? And I know there's composting that's taking place, but yeah, I really believe that there's such a huge opportunity, and it bothers everyone. It doesn't matter where the haves, the have-nots, the Republicans, Democrats, everybody's like, my gosh, don't waste the food,
Yeah, food waste is it's an issue that brings many together, and there's so many opportunities for win-wins. And I think what you're referring to is what I've always known as food recovery. How do we recover wholesome food instead of having it go to waste and get it to communities in need? And there is the Good Samaritan Act, the Bill Emerson Act, federally, that exempts organizations from liability in the case of exempting gross negligence if they donate food. So there are still some food safety requirements, or if you can't have I only know outdated ones, but you can't have food out for a buffet a number of hours and then donate it. You have to, of course, meet all the standard food safety regulations, but there's a lot that people don't know. And so I guess what I'm hearing from what you're saying is, how do we support food recovery as a starting place for reducing food waste and reducing food insecurity in our state? And I absolutely agree with that. And I think we could put our heads together, and it's one aspect of food waste that I think has a lot of potential.
Thank you.
Representative Gruber?
Yes, first I would like to say thank you for all your work, and particularly work that brought so many people together, because sometimes we fight too much, and bringing people together
Yeah.
for commonality is really what New Hampshire should be standing for. So thank you first. And I think your approach, looking at the assets that we can leverage is really brilliant, and I like that too. My question and concern is, I'm pretty old now. A number of issues great work is done, and then it gets old. And so, what's your situation of financial support to keep this work going, keeping it live, and keeping it current, so that groups like us can actually get good information in a timely manner, so that we could do a better job here? So how's that?
Yeah, well, I'll say that, well, one, we already have some plans to move the plan forward. So we have our statewide gathering is in person on May 21st. I wanted to invite you all. It's in the Concord area in Loudon at Sanborn Mills Farm. You're all welcome to join. And the breakout sessions are each focused around moving forward at least one recommendation of the plan. So food waste is a focus of one of them. It actually focuses on it's not food recovery, but it is focused on how can we expand on-farm community composting in a way that works well for our farms and provides more opportunities for commercial composting around the state, or community composting around the state, and expand learning from what our neighbors are doing and how to expand or replicate the programs that our neighboring states have that are working. They have a program called the Composting Association of Vermont has a program for this in a toolkit, and they're going to come share that so that we can learn from that and think about if it would help for New Hampshire or other models. But regardless, we have a number of plans to move forward on the content. I think your question is really trying to get at the financial longevity of supporting this kind of work. And that's really challenging. It's a hard one for me to answer. The New Hampshire Food Alliance is a program of the University of New Hampshire. We seek and receive funding from private foundations and federal and state sources. So we have a mixture of funding of revenue streams. And we have some support we have a lot of philanthropic buy-in to continue to move forward this plan. So while we don't have funding for the long term, I am very optimistic, but appreciate any help you can give or any advice you have around that.
So I know you have a time constraint.
I'm okay until 11:30. I just have to leave at 11:30.
Okay, terrific. Representative Sofakaitis, and then Howard.
Thank you. And this is brilliant. I just couldn't be more impressed with this book. You might not know the answer to this, and Sean has moved along. So I've been really sick in my stomach about the number of farms that are failing nationwide with the death of USAID, and the contracts aren't being paid to the farmers that had stuff in the field and it was just left to die. So do we have any farmers here in the state who are in trouble because of non-fulfilled USAID contracts?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. You're correct. I haven't heard of any, if that is any reassurance. But I don't know the answer, so I should not speak.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to commend you on this document. I've worked on a number of strategic plans for urban planning, and this is as a resource, this is head and shoulders above anything that I've ever worked on myself. It's amazing. And one of my favorite things is the list of authors in each section, because as a body here, it'll be very handy to us as a resource of who we should be checking with on all of these different topics. It's just brilliant. And the format is excellent. I'm so impressed.
Thank you. That is so meaningful. And I'll add that there's another, I really, truly, we sort of put our heads down, and we're a very small team and worked really hard at this and brought together this incredible group of people. It's been this really inspiring project over the last couple of years. And one of the assets that's in the print copy and on the website is, in addition to the authors, we asked authors to list out organizations working in this space. So if you look in the that's not in the print copy. If you look on the website, on the brief, at the bottom, it says organizations that work in the space. And there's like 20 organizations that work on food waste. And then, so that's across all the briefs. You can see a list of organizations, not even that authored it, but on top of that, who else is working in this space, so we can all when I entered the New Hampshire food system work a few years ago, I was very overwhelmed with where to begin. There's so many organizations doing this work in the state, and in the print copy at the back, there's an organizational directory. So you can see the organizations in alphabetical order that were named and which topics they were sort of tagged with. And there's, I don't know, 500 organizations on the list.
I didn't see New Hampshire Farm Bureau though. Were they involved in this at all?
They were involved, yes.
Yeah, okay.
They, in a couple of ways. One, for example, Joyce Brady, who's the president of the Farm Bureau, was an author on the meat and eggs brief, which is one of a very substantial brief, of course, in this document.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah? Oh, it is? Oh, okay. I missed it. All right. Any questions from this side of the room? Oh, Representative Minor, sorry.
So I just want to step back a minute when you're talking about composting on the farms. We do actually own a poultry farm, and we do compost. Well, let me start over. We found some pretty inventive ways of selling different products. For instance, if we process a bird, let's say a meat bird, everything on that bird is sold, believe it or not, except for the entrails, such as the intestines and the feathers. So if you know anybody that needs those, I got plenty of them when we get going. But having said that, I mean, the organ meats are sold, the feet are sold, the heads are sold for sometimes, the feet and heads are sold for raw dog food, which is a huge market. So the point I'm trying to make is I agree with what you're saying. There are some pretty inventive ways of selling all the products and minimizing what it is that you compost.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
And if the committee is interested, Aaron Reitz has offered to be here to offer a perspective from the business community.
Sure, we'd love to hear from him. Thank you so much. This is just a really impressive, outstanding document, and I can't wait to go home and further dig through it.
Well, and I'm sorry that the screen share did not work, but I can be a further resource if you have questions or you want to dig in. I hope that the website is really easy to use, so when you pull it up, just go to recommendations, and everything's pretty straightforward. But always happy to walk you through or connect you and brainstorm. And thank you for all of the great work you're doing. And we need your help. And this plan is, the intention is to bring together the best thinking and add to it and utilize it and move together as a community, because I think we can all agree that strengthening our food system is crucial for the New Hampshire we want to live in. Representative Bixby.
Yeah, just for your information, the bill filing period for bills to be introduced for next year is a fairly short window in September. I'm not sure of the exact dates. I think it's I think at the most a week. So if there are particular bills or policy things that you think need to have bills addressing them, then get in touch with members of the committee so that we can at some point during the summer, so we can start getting those things ready so they can submit them in that relatively short window.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah, we have several months now leading up to what he's saying. Yeah, so it'd be great. We have a small filing period, but we want them all ready to go so we can just launch them right in. Yep, we can start tomorrow. Exactly.
Gosh, but we also have to work with the Senate. So the other folks on the other side of the building here, and I hope that you can make contact with perhaps Senator Pearl to do a similar presentation to the senators there, because they certainly could use some more education. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sofakidis.
I'm just sorry this is combined from my other question, but I'm recalling that when my son was in 4th grade, and I'll tell you how long ago it is. He's 33 now, but they had to go to a place called Stone Camp, and I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it was right after his dad had died, and I was a wreck that he was going there. But he went up there, and it was Conway, somewhere up in there, and I live in Nashua, so I was a wreck about him going. And but anyhow, I was reading the things about what they were going to do at this stone camp, and they were teaching the kids about food waste. And so on the first day there, they had all the kids empty their trays into one bin, and then they weighed it. And then every day they weighed the dish, the leftover food, the wasted food, and it got better every day of the week, because they could see a visual of how much they were wasting, and they were thinking about it. And I just think it's a brilliant thing, but I don't know if they have Stone Camp anymore.
No, but they do have, there is a brief focus on early childhood education and food literacy, food system literacy. And I think that that's such a phenomenal point. It could be my daughter's going to farm camp this summer at Brandmore Farm. I wish it was the whole summer, but it's only a week. So, there are so many opportunities that we could utilize to help our young people be more aware of both where their food comes from and where it's going. And I think that's where all of this work starts. So I absolutely echo that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. So introduce yourself, sir, and
Very good. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Aaron. My name is Alan Reitz. I live in Plainfield, New Hampshire, have since the early 90s. I'm with the Hanover Co-op Food Stores. I have worked with Hanover since 1995, when it was one store and one auto service center. Of course, we're 3 stores, 2 auto service centers, a production kitchen. We're a busy place. And just food co-op in the United States. That's an eyebrow raiser for some folks. At $90 million, we source nearly $20 million from within a 100-mile radius, with local and regionally sourced food a very, very high priority for us. We're not going to compete against the Krogers of the world, et cetera, but what we can do as a homegrown New Hampshire grocer, we started in 1936, is to look at our region as a viable, important, critical part of what New Hampshire can do. And it's not just for our co-op, it's about independent retailers across the state. You add up all the independent retailers in New Hampshire and the AG trucks, the Associated Grocers of New England trucks you see on the highways that are based right here in New Hampshire, they are delivering to over 800 stores. Now, it's a lot of commodity products. I'll get down to where I see this tool in my role as Director of Public and Government Affairs. So that's a fancy title for somebody who spends day in, day out focused on small and mid-scale agriculture, affordable workforce housing. Those are 2 of my primary areas. When Nicole gave me a quick call late yesterday afternoon and said that she was coming down to speak with you, I said, my docket's just been cleared. I'm coming too, because this, as you have seen, is such a critical resource, a resource I could have used a few years ago. And I will get to that briefly in just a moment. I want to be very respectful of your time. And just as a bit more insight on my background, since about 1997, I have been involved in quite a few farmer interviews. I've been on a lot of back porches and at kitchen tables talking to farmers in the region to communicate their story, to understand the challenges they face. Because when we support our farmers, we support our food system. When we support the food system, you know the rest of the story. When Nicole and her team and Colleen really got busy putting this together, I was one of the first ones to the table because I had seen another example in another state. It was over Vermont had a variation of this. And it was in the early days of the pandemic when we knew that there were federal dollars coming in. With Nicole, Colleen, and a few select others, we said, how can we at least put a proposal out to the commissioner on getting some of those dollars focused on our local and regional food system? One of those projects was meat processing, small-scale meat processing for the state. We source a lot of meat in our stores, but it doesn't have to come through Hanover for me to care about it. So we worked very hard to put together a proposal, and I had to go to that document over in Vermont, the Vermont side. It's a great document. I refer to it a lot. It's got a lot of Post-it notes on it. Because I needed, with our team, to put together a proposal that could go in front of the commissioner, that meant the commissioner had a viable, substantive document that he could take to Commissioner Caswell. Because there are a lot of demands on those dollars, we know. But through a lot of work, through great team effort in the New Hampshire Food Alliance, we were able to secure $1.2 million for meat processing in the state. And that's an important thing. And I like the idea of being able to grab a New Hampshire document when I'm looking to tell and understand a New Hampshire story. So for me, this is critical because, as I've said, what we do in this state at your level and what we do at my level is where we together have all people in the conversation. Just a couple of other quick points I want to pull out. There's another area. When I flip through my brand new copy, thank you so much for the hand delivering it to me this morning. I look at grains, for instance. You know, grains is an area that can lead to dairy farm diversification. Dairy farms have this ability. They usually have broad open acreage. They have the equipment to harvest. Grains and beans and food grade oils are really an opportunity for diversification. It's never going to surpass, say, nursery crops in this state, which you'll see in this document are a big source of revenue. But at the same time, if it makes a dairy farm more viable, or if it produces local ingredients that go to a local baker, or produces grains and barley that can go to a local brewer, these are all multiplier effects. And not only are those ingredients, but that's somebody who has to buy a truck. And that's somebody who has cooler and refrigeration that needs working on. That's so much of what's behind the scenes of some of this, and I just commend the team for everything they have done. So from my perspective, if independent retailers can have this healthy and growing resilient network, we're all going to do better because Hanover Co-op's not going anywhere. We have over 350 employees. We have over 30,000 customer owners. And I just want to close, Representative Potenza, your comment about food rescue. Starting in 2004, we began pulling produce and other products from our shelves that were near code or products that were not marketable, but edible. And that's, I think, what you're referring to. And it led to a program called Willing Hands, which is probably quite well known in the region. And the Willing Hands truck stops by our stores 2 to 3 times a day, collecting 1.5 tons of food each week. And so that's going to and now there are other organizations and stores involved, but it serves over 60 food access organizations in the region. So the model is there. Anybody you know who wants to learn more, have them call me up and I'll talk their ear off.
I know there's also a lot of produce departments in supermarkets where once a week or twice a week, somebody who has a pig farm will stop by and pick up.
We also have,
you
we
know,
have 3 levels of food rescue and
yeah, yeah.
recovery. So we have Willing Hands, not marketable, but edible. We have food for pigs. Pigs will not eat pineapple rinds.
Right.
Okay. So then there's compost.
Yep.
And then with your waste management and the waste management conversation that we've had regarding food, there is also the issue we know about with other contaminants that can get in there. So that's something that when it comes to contaminants, PFAS is one, that if it's been involved in packaging, there is certain technology that would depackage, and we want to make sure that anything that goes in our compost and goes to our farmers is something that they feel confident they can put on their soil. But with teams like this and folks like you, we can
Right.
make sure we get the best solution going forward.
Right.
We used
I
to have
remember.
pig buckets.
Yeah.
That's what we called them. I was little, so the pickles would come in these big, huge green buckets, kind of like the Home Depot orange buckets. And so, yeah, I would make sure I was little, and at my father's restaurant, and we would make sure that all the pig buckets were filled up, and I would be there and watch him take them, and I'm like, how many pigs do you have? I mean, that's the kind of stuff, but you don't hear a lot about that, and so I just think all of that stuff we could be feeding our animals that then we're eating those animals, and it's just there's so much that we can
It's
do.
interesting too, talk about locally produced food, local our people who want to buy local. I saw a recent post on Facebook from Eckhart Farm in Washington, where she was responding to someone who asked her, "So how have these tariffs been affecting your business?" And she said, "It doesn't affect us at all. Everything we grow our own, all the ingredients that we use in the products that we sell are produced on our farm." So we don't have to buy stuff from anywhere else. We have our own eggs, we have our own dairy, we make our own cheese. We do a number of things. We're not importing anything from anywhere. So it's, to me, kind of really an interesting post that she had put out there. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a member of the Hanover Co-op. It's the best. But one of the things that I would ask you is, the local stuff is a little bit more expensive, and when you go to the co-op, you know that you are going to pay at least a small premium, if not a large premium, for local things, and I just wonder if there's a future where that's less true.
That future it could be right now. Okay, so one of the things that we saw during the pandemic, as well as at other periods, is that there is a change once there are threats or there are products that happen to go under, food contamination. You see that gap change. But one of the policies that we have made from really the 90s, we set it in very hard stone, is to say to the farmers, tell us what you need to charge. Do not get into the point of worrying to say, oh my gosh, I got to lower the price because I don't want to lose the co-op account. A farm that goes out of business because they were so worried about charging what it costs, we have had to be very clear with our farmers to say, look, you have needs and costs. We'll take a hit on our margin. We don't want you taking the hit. We want you to survive and stay true. The other question is like, why is other food so cheap? It's like somebody's paying the cost for that, whether it's shortcuts in the system, which we hear about or not. So I work in a building with merchandisers who spend long days saying, how little can we get away for selling this? Because we also know we compete with chain stores that are truly $30 billion entities, including the ones that dominate this state. But your point is well taken. I never want it to be on the backs of the farmers. We've got to make sure we make it efficient. And I know that's not what you're suggesting. Yeah.
But yet a lot of people are willing to pay that extra premium for something local, for something fresher, for something they know where it's been grown and how it's been grown.
You get what you pay for.
$5 more for that
I'll
pie
just
that's
make one
made by the
comment, and then I just want to get Nicole's perspective. I was reading a study by a Harris poll some years ago that said when it comes to local food, the second highest factor of value for consumers was it's local. The most dominant choice was it has an economic impact on my community.
I just want to
Representative Wheeler
respond.
and then Minor.
Oh, Representative Aaron, can I respond quickly to
Sure.
the,
Sure.
I just want to just add a response to your question and say that I think New Hampshire farms are very small compared to farms across our country. If you look at the chart that I just pulled up here, by value of sales, more than half of our farms had less than $10,000 in sales, gross revenue, in 2022. And so, another 1,000 under $50,000 in gross revenue. So when you talk about pricing for local food, my mind goes to scale. And if we can support farmers in doing what they love, a very, very hard job, as I'm sure you all know, and that we can help them increase their scale so that it is a viable business and they can support themselves and their families, but grow slightly up to just sort of the middle, obviously not huge farms, but to be at 100,000. There's a tipping point at, I think it depends, it's different depending on who you're talking to, but it's about $200,000 to $300,000 a year in revenue, where farms tend to become more financially viable as an operation. And if we can support this 2,000, 3,000 of our farms to grow just slightly and really truly support their business development and production, I think that's when you start to see prices come down a little bit or be more competitive.
Representative Wheeler.
I'm waving off, Madam.
Okay. Representative Minor.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And thank you again, both of you, for being here today to testify. To your point, though, with the cost of the product seemingly constantly going up, it's very true, because the cost of grain is constantly going up. The cost of electricity is constantly going up. Those people that you sell to, our customers, are well aware of those mitigating circumstances. So they really don't have a problem with paying a little bit more for a good product. It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, it's the cooperative was started in 1936. In the last paragraph of the founding document, the founders said 17 people agreed that it shall be the policy of this club to buy from local merchants as much as possible. And I would just say, on the local and the price and the demands of our times, you can walk into our stores and still find a dozen McNamara eggs priced at about $4.99. They have not gone up, with the national commodity egg price being closer to $10. So local pays in a lot of ways.
Well, I want to represent Bixby, and
Yeah.
I know they have to go.
Right. So just if we the chart that was the previous chart, you don't need to bring it up again. You just the two columns that were to the left, that were the tallest ones. Those one of the things that New Hampshire is either number 1 or number 2 in is direct to consumer sales, which sounds like it's a good thing to be like number 1 or number 2 in. But what that means is that the farmer or his employees have to be involved in every single sale that is bringing revenue into the farm. Which doesn't leave a lot of room for. I mean, that's a cost in labor. It reduces the amount of time that can be used towards growing the business. So, having organizations like the Hannaford Food Co-op that buy from our local farmers at a reasonable price that will sustain them is really important, and I compliment your work on that. And that's something that it would be good to see more avenues where our smaller farmers can actually get steady contracts.
And thank you, Representative Bixby. I absolutely agree. I'm a big fan of all of the retail food cooperatives in the state. And I'll add that restaurants are another great avenue that we're really involved in the strategic plan, and I think a really great potential opportunity for growth. And also want to just call out other creative avenues for direct sales that have a less labor intensive relationship with the farmer, like community supported agriculture, CSA shares, where you buy in for a share for the season and receive a weekly allotment of whatever crop is in season that week or is ready to be harvested that week. There are some models. That's what I have right now. I host at my house from a nearby farm where he has over 100 members. Everything's sold out at the start of the growing season, and the farm owner delivers it weekly or twice a week. So it sort of splits up his harvest load. So there are creative models out there that certainly won't work for everyone. And I agree that grocers and restaurants are crucial for getting local food to a wider audience of Granite Staters. And I really do want to lean into the direct connection of our farms with our citizens and with your constituents, because that brings me great joy, and it feels like a really important part of our food community. And so I think there's room for all of it.
I know I'm on the board secretary actually of the South Ackworth Village store, which is community owned actually. And we also we make sure we try and source local everything for sale in the store. Honey, locally produced beef, eggs, milk, everything. We try and bring that all in. And the local producers certainly appreciate it, and the local consumers absolutely appreciate it. So, I think small grocers like that too, it's important.
Well, thank you so much for having
We really
us.
appreciate
for-
you taking the time to come
Yes.
today and present this and let us know the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, and please don't hesitate to reach out anytime. Thank you,
Okay.
committee members. Yes, both Representative Aaron, Chairwoman Aaron, and Representative Bixby have my contact information. Please do reach out anytime. We're here to support you in doing this important work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we do have at noon, we can go over to Barley House and enjoy free lunch courtesy of New Hampshire Home Builders. We've been invited to be there. So let's go later and I'll meet you all up there and we'll see you later. We're adjourned. Do I hear? And I will send out an email and let you know when we can do SB 302 and exec that bill. Yeah, when those bills for study committees get passed, we will send out some kind of notice as to when we will be convening for those. Okay. Be in the fall sometime.